All right. I call to order the meeting of the mayor and council of the Borough of River Edge, special meeting, December 15, 2021. I ask as we, for a moment of silent reflection for all those who have died or those who have been displaced or homeless or injured or jobless due to the terrible tornado that went through Kentucky and several other states. As for us to also remember two River Edge residents who have recently passed, Tom Byrne and Doug Levine. And finally, I ask for us all to reflect upon the more than 800,000 who have died from COVID in the United States. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United
States of America
and to the
and to the
republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
with
with
liberty and
justice for all. Statement of compliance with the Open Public Meeting Act. This meeting complies with the Open Public Meeting Act by notification on January 8th of this location, date and time, to the Ridgewood News and the Record, and by posting of the same on the municipal bulletin board and the borough website, and a filing notice of the same with the municipal clerk. The notice of this special meeting via the Tuesday, December 7th, 2021 sunshine notice has been sent to the Record and the Ridgewood News and has been posted on the municipal bulletin board and the borough website. Roll call.
Councilwoman Deed,
Here.
Councilman Canigo,
Present.
here.
Here, sorry.
Councilwoman Kaufman,
Here.
Councilwoman Kinsella,
Here.
Councilwoman Montesano Cohen.
Here.
Mayor Papaleo.
Here, I'm sorry about that. Let me just mute my phone. And also, just in case any council member doesn't know it, on a computer, I don't know about on other devices, if you hit the space bar, it temporarily unmutes you so that you don't have to actually click on the unmute button if you have that ability. Okay, we have a presentation from Anthony Iovino of Iovino and Arcaria Architects, Municipal Building Initial Assessment Recommendation. Anthony, thank you for coming.
Sure.
And we appreciate the documents you had sent earlier to the council, including some drawings, some pictures, as well as your letter of recommendation. However, there may be members of the council who could not review that given their work obligations. So if you can present those documents as you go over, I believe you have presentation ability. That would be good.
Okay.
Finally, before Anthony begins, I need to announce that there will be a closed session meeting after this meeting in regards to collective bargaining issue that came up just recently. And so there will be a closed session meeting of the mayor and council after this meeting. Anthony, feel free to begin.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. My office was asked just a couple of weeks ago to come in and take a look at a number of issues that have plagued the building. I did send a couple of documents out earlier today just so that you'd hopefully have a chance to see some of it beforehand. And it's so fluid right now, I know I'm going to update that tomorrow because I got some late information from my engineer, which we'll talk about. But I'd just like to summarize the issues that we were asked to look at and what we found. And I have some graphics that I'll share in a second as it relates to what we're talking about. The issues at hand, obviously the floor sagging that starts with the attic and the second floor of the administrative office spaces is a major one. There were some exterior woodwork conditions at the front of the building, which is essentially moisture damage and rot. Electrical load issues throughout again, the Borough Hall side of the building, mechanical systems, heating, air conditioning, water infiltration at the basement of the borough offices, as well as at the police department. So I'm going to start with the complicated one first, is the structural. And I think I can share, let's see. Great.
While Anthony's sharing, let me also add that the heat has been out in a good portion of the borough for, Lizette, how long would you say?
Yes, the heat was out in the first floor for about 2 weeks in November, and then it came back on when climate came. Then it went out last week, and the day before yesterday, on Monday, it went out on the second floor. So there is no heat in the municipal building. Everything is, the heat that is being provided is various space heaters throughout the offices. But when you go to the hallways, there it's absolutely cold.
And Lizette, just real quick, I believe that we've had some electrical issues too with email being down, phones being down, and other things. Just briefly mention that before Anthony goes into his presentation.
Yes, some of it is from the space heaters that the electrical, we get surges and it shuts down our computers and our phones have to reboot. But also there are periodic surges that happen in the main building and extend as far off as the fire prevention building, which is in the public safety side. And it's just these surges that shuts down our equipment, and we have to wait for everything to reboot.
Can you give us just a brief idea of how long that reboot takes?
Depending what goes down, it's usually the computers. The phones take longer to reboot based on the system. So the computers could take about 5 to 10 minutes, depending if they have the most recent updates installed. If not, then it'll just take advantage and update right then and there. And the phones could take about a good 15 minutes per person.
Okay, Anthony, thank you for being patient with that. Anthony, why don't you resume your presentation?
Okay, thank you. Sorry, as you were talking, the thing I was about to share just quit on me. So I'll come back to that one in a second. But can you can't see what I'm sharing just yet, right?
No, we did see something and then it
Yeah.
stopped.
Yeah,
We
that-
see that you're sharing now. We see the attic of the building.
Okay, so I'll work with that. There were some, the old floor plans, and I was just identifying where this photo was taken from. So structurally, when we visited, and I will say I visited twice. I came the first time with Lizette and Jason, and I walked the building top to bottom to look at the particular issues. And then I was back again with a structural engineer, and Jason was able to open up a couple of spots in the walls for us to validate what we were seeing. The structural engineer issued a report, and I'll surmise what it says here. And I know again, I just got that today, and there's some things I want him to add into it. In this picture, and I believe you can see my cursor, this little speed bump, if you will, that's in the middle of the attic. And I don't know how many of you have had the pleasure of going into your attic. But this photo is from my first visit. And Lizette mentioned to me earlier today that the rest of those boxes have been taken down. I had asked for that. My structural engineer had asked for that as well. The issue at hand right now is this little speed bump back here is a beam, right? And I have a different picture here. Oh, come on. This is what happened to my plans a second ago. That beam is made of 3 LVLs, or a composite of something that's about a 2x12 with a plywood flitch plate. The engineer describes it, but basically where that beam is now, there used to be a wall below it. And in the 1991 renovation, apparently that wall was taken away based on the plans that we saw. And so this beam stretches from your exterior wall over to the wall where the bathrooms are on the top floor. And that beam on the bathroom side, if you will, sits on a 4x4 post. All of that's okay so far. The only issue up here is that it was overloaded from the storage. And if you look at the top of that beam, you'll see that it's opening. That can be repaired, and that needs to be added into the structural report. The other thing that the engineer mentioned to me when we were here on site is the floor joists of the attic that come to that beam are just nailed, and they need to have a seat, if you will, a metal joist hanger at each one of those. The ceiling would have to be opened up, the joist hangers installed, and the beam repaired, but it doesn't have to be replaced as far as we can tell so far. The real issue is when the load of the attic comes down onto that one post and goes to the floor of the second floor, the ceiling of the first floor, it ends up right over the doorway that leads to the health department at the end of the public hallway. If you take a good look at that doorway, you'll see that it's stressed, right? You can see the bow in the ceiling. We opened that up as well. And what we confirmed was they simply took that post and dropped it on whatever framing was there. There should be a header, a structural beam, if you will, over that door that then comes down on two more posts on either side of the door and comes down to the load-bearing wall below. In the basement, there is a load-bearing wall. So that's missing. And what's happening is at the ceiling of the first floor and the floor of the second floor, it's compressing. And that's what the sag in the floor is. So the attic is sagging because the attic was overloaded, but all of that weight's coming down on this one side that's not properly supported. So in the structural engineer's report, what he's recommending is we need to carry that load even temporarily to shore it up from the basement up to that attic floor. So we need to put some temporary supports in and put in a proper header or beam over that doorway on the first floor. And at the same time, you probably would want to jack up the floor to level it out. Doing so absolutely will cause cracks in some of the walls, and there will be some work to be done. The scope of this would be opening the ceiling at the second floor, opening the ceiling at the first floor in the whole work area. The basement's the simplest of them all because there's just some patching we need to do at the bearing wall below. That's the major concern right there. The building, this area, in our opinion, our engineer's opinion, that area is not in grave danger of falling down, but this is something that needs rather immediate attention. So that's the most serious of all the issues that we saw. I could take questions on that now or come back to it at the end of this if you wish.
Anthony, why don't you, the council can write down questions. Why don't you continue with your general presentation? And then if the council wants to ask questions about specifics, we can go back to that. Because I certainly have questions, but if we do it where you present and we ask questions, we might be here for hours and hours. So I think it's more efficient for you to finish your presentation.
Okay, I agree. I just want to see if I can get those right. I think that's fine. I just want to make sure I have the pictures. In the share, can you see? Looks like they're showing up for a second and disappearing.
Yes, they're showing up for a second and disappearing.
All right, so I can describe all of these, so that's fine. I don't want to get caught up in that. So structural was the one issue. The next I want to talk about is the mechanical issue. And I have additional information that my engineer got to me late this afternoon, and I will update our report, Lizette, and resend that out to you tomorrow for distribution. So the mechanical system, even as you just mentioned at the start of this meeting, is a real thorn. As we understand, it was installed maybe 7 years ago or so, but it's already outdated. Our engineer looked into it.
May I interrupt for a second?
Yeah.
For the public's benefit, you mean the heating and air conditioning as the mechanical system?
Yes, I do. Yes.
All right, just because the public will view this won't know that. Sorry
Understood.
to interrupt.
No, that's okay. So the original building had a boiler system. I don't even know if it had air conditioning when the renovation was done in '91. But then the furnace or boiler in the basement was taken away, and it's basically a split unit. So a split unit, as opposed to a packaged air conditioning unit or HVAC unit, is where the condenser is outside and the fan unit is inside, separate from each other, split. If you look on the north side of your building, right, you have those giant LG compressors that are out on the side of your building. Apparently that was, according to our engineer, might have been state of the art when it was first put out, but they quickly stopped making these. And apparently even in his research, there's only one trained certified tech in the whole state of Jersey that could modify this thing. You're obviously having problems controlling the heating and the cooling side. And the problem with the heating side forces you to have these electric heaters throughout the spaces that you're plugging in and tripping a lot of circuits. The bottom line with that mechanical system, his recommendation is you have to completely change it out. He has to dive deeper, but he doesn't think it's something where you would want to salvage the blower side of it, change the condensers and the controls, but he needs to dive deeper in that. But if you have something that can't be serviced and it's costing you more every year, right? I think the report was 70,000 in 2 years worth of service is insane for a system that is 7 or 8 years old. So that's a real issue. And that one will probably cost more than the structural repair for sure. On the electrical side, the building has a 3-phase 800 amp service, which feeds both the police and the borough offices. That's adequate. The issue that you have, Lizette, especially, right, you're experiencing that there aren't enough outlets around. There are tons of extension cords. And with the electric heaters, you're tripping these circuits that are being overloaded because there aren't many circuits. But you have room to add, like there's a branch panel on the second floor, which has only a handful of circuits in it. It has room to spare. So simply a number of outlets could be added at each of the 2 floors that are dedicated for the electric heaters as a temporary patch, if you will, but just as convenience throughout. So electrical isn't as bad as it might seem. That ties into, there was water infiltration at the basement of the borough offices that was around the electric panel. So our engineer notes that there's some rust, evidence of water damage around the electric panels, but they're okay. That's not an issue at the moment. When we were there, we walked out in the front with Jason, and we were pointing out some landscaping issues that are basically the water comes down off the building, gets trapped in the front part of the building, right where the electrical service is. And it has nowhere to go. So it's just going in the building. There's a basement window there, and then there are a lot of weak spots. But I think if the area is regraded around the front and you drive the water away from the building, this issue will stop. There's also a roof drain that comes down and does not go into the pipe in the ground. And Jason indicated that they had scoped it out and he believes that it's blocked. And that could be from the amount of trees that are right there that have grown over the years. So either that drain should be fixed, or in the least, more immediately, that roof leader needs to come down and extend past the high point so it can drain away from the building, right? So if we do those 2 things, regrade some of the landscaping and move and extend this leader, that will likely take care of the water issues in the borough side of the building. The police has another issue that is more significant, right? So we walked the basement of the police building, and in a number of spots, the white painted concrete block walls are blistering. That means they're trapped, moisture is being trapped into the concrete block and it's trying to wick out, and it just bubbles the paint out. When I went outside to look at it, Jason and I walked the building, and one of the things you'll notice, and I'm sorry my photos quit on me here, but if you look at the police building, the bottom 4 or 5 courses of brick are all stained with salts. And it's not road salt, it's salt that wicks through the brick and the mortar because moisture is trapped behind it. That's a typical sign of trapping moisture. So your two-story police building, if you look closely, halfway up, there's a caulk joint. The upper half of the brick is held up there by a brick shelf, and there's no problem there. You don't see the salts. And then the bottom half is likely held on a foundation wall. At the bottom, at right above grade, there should be drains, weep holes, as I wrote in my report. So every few courses, you should have an open vertical joint or a little straw that comes out, if you will. And what that does is the water that gets trapped behind the brick, which is normal, brick is porous, it comes in, but there's waterproofing behind brick that allows moisture to come down. And when it gets to the angle, it comes out through these drainage holes. I don't see those. I see a few of them. They could all be blocked, but all around that whole perimeter, you'll see those salts. And what I recommend at this point is to do some investigation in terms of opening a few areas, maybe 3 or 4 around the building of brick, and a mason should do this, for us to see the condition of the shelf angle, the condition of the flashing that would be over it that drives the water out, and to see what's happening with the weep holes. I fully expect what's happening there is that the moisture is not being allowed out at that point and is simply wicking down into the concrete block below. So I suspect that that's the cause, and the first course of action is to do that further investigation on that piece of the water damage. I think the last item I had was about the exterior woodwork at the front of the building. So when you go around the old front porch, if you will, of the building, all the bases of those columns are rotted out. And that's water damage for the most part over the years. The columns are wrapped in aluminum, and I don't believe that that was original. I have to believe it wasn't from back then. And I think you need to open those up to see the condition of the actual column behind it, the structural portion of it. But then everything above on the pediment, the triangle piece out front, all of that woodwork, the trim work, the boards, really looks like it's in poor condition, as was you have one roof dormer on the backside. My concern is the age of the building, and the paint is most likely containing lead. So that needs to be tested before you do anything. That doesn't stop you from doing anything. It just tells you a procedure you have to go through. The question would be whether it's all about replacement or is it about patching and repair work. The columns, the bases are simple, trim, those are easy. I would replace them, they're really far gone. The question about the columns, you can buy period style enclosures that would be more respectful of the original building that we can put around those. And the pediment up top is most of the work, because it's, without getting up there and seeing it, it's a question of whether it is again, scraping and painting, or is it replacement of the woodwork? But nothing is that I can see in that area is in danger of falling. But I would recommend that we open up a portion of the columns, maybe from the backside that you don't see from the street, that we could at least get our eyes on the actual column inside. And that I think touches on all of those individual issues that we were asked to look at.
Okay, before I open up to council questions, I just have 1 or 2 questions, and I think it's self-evident, but I want to make sure we say it for the public. The building right now is safe, correct?
Yes.
But the building does have some immediate concerns that we need to address for safety reasons.
Yes.
We also have other concerns that we need to address for the overall health of the building that are somewhat immediate.
Yes.
Okay. The mechanical issue is not going to go away, if I'm summarizing what you're saying. And we're talking about either an expensive repair or an expensive replacement. But it sounded like you were saying you recommend the replacement because the repair is not really going to have a long-term life.
That's our initial feel of it, but I want to discuss it further with my engineer. I haven't had that chance this evening to do so.
Okay. The last question I have is not something you address, but it's a concern I have, and I just want for you to tell me what you think. There is a 6x6 wooden pillar in the basement, and I just want to be reassured that that's not a safety concern. I'm assuming it's not because you didn't bring it up, but I just want to ask that question.
Correct, right. And I know my engineer didn't address it in the letter, but we did talk about it when we were there, right? So I don't know if everybody's seen it, and that wasn't a photo I had with me this evening, but I could send you one. It is a 6x6, not so straight post in the basement that I believe was put in during the 1991 elevator addition and alterations to the building. It appears, you know, if we're just sort of guessing what happened there, when you look at this beam, so this is a beam that goes across the building from the original front Kinderkamak side through, and it looks like they needed to open up the wall that is that was the final bearing point of that beam, because the elevator is on the other side of that. And they did not put back a proper bearing, so it looks like they just put this 6x6 post there. So our engineer looked at it, and he was actually not concerned about it. He says it's doing its job, but it should be changed. And what he thought was a simple repair, Mayor, if you were to look at it, the wall at the end of that beam is thicker, about 2 feet lower than the beam, and it looks like it's been modified, and it took away the bearing capacity. He said you can literally brick that up and improve the bearing capacity of the beam, and then take away the 6x6 post. But that is another item that he needs to dive deeper on, but he was not concerned about that.
I'm reassured. I really, really, really appreciate that. Okay, normally on Zoom, it's kind of hard to just have the council randomly tune in. So I normally go to our council president. Council President Kanigo, do you wish to ask a question now, or do you wish to postpone and let somebody else proceed and come back to you?
I'll postpone, thanks.
All right. Councilwoman Bastide, do you wish to ask now or come back?
I have one initial question, and I may have another after everyone else has asked, but if I could, I'll ask my one question. It's very general. While these repairs, if we authorize repairs to be made, can the building remain inhabited for work for our employees? That's my first question.
Maybe.
Okay.
The police side's not an issue, of course. It's the Kinderkamak side of the building. The mechanical work might be, well, it's probably as much of an issue than the structural. The concern with the structural work is we need to open up the ceilings and walls in the area of concern. That could be done, it's that piece especially that maybe the employees shouldn't be around because of potential dust. So maybe that work takes place on a Saturday, or maybe there's 1 or 2 days that it's closed. But I think that the opening up and the temporary shoring could be done just in a matter of a couple of days.
Okay, so it would have minimal impact as far as displacing employees from their normal work operations, based on what you know today.
Right. At the moment, I would say that that's probably the case.
Okay, great. Thank you. That was my only question for the moment, Mayor.
Excellent. Councilwoman Kaufman, would you like to speak now or wait?
I can wait. I was
All
just
right.
going to ask the same thing you asked. So.
All right. Councilman Gordier, would you like to speak now or would you like to wait?
I would just like to say one thing, Mayor. I spoke to the DPW superintendent, and the drain in question will be fixed within the next couple of weeks.
Okay. Councilwoman Montesano Cohen, question now or do you wish to wait?
Just one general question at this point. The beam that you, Mayor, mentioned, that is the 6x6 post that Mr. Jovino talked about, would that be then included in your revised report as part of the structural issues?
Yes, I will do that.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilwoman Kinsella.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have one question, which I'm not sure you can answer at the moment, but is there any concerns with mold exposure?
I didn't see or feel or smell any, certainly not on the borough side. The water infiltration is more of an issue on the police side. And, obviously, it's actually doing more damage there. Some of the door frames are rusting out, there's a higher moisture content there. I didn't witness any, I didn't get the sense that it was there, but I can imagine that the humidity level stays high in that basement.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I'm going to ask a couple of questions, and we're going to go through the rotation again. Anthony, what, in your professional opinion, based on the limited knowledge you have now, knowing that you do not have a complete report and you have not been able to open up certain sections of the building, what sort of timeline do you consider to be a prudent and safe course? And what portions of your report do you think are immediate? What portions of your report can wait till the summer after we have passed the capital budget? And what portions of your report, and again, this is limited, we know that your report isn't done, but this gives us kind of a framework, and that's what I see my role as mayor, is to kind of, lead the discussion so that we can have a framework to think about it. And what should we be considering over a 1, 2, or 3 year range? And again, we're not going to hold you to this. This is an initial report, but if you could give us, as a professional, what you think needs to be done immediately, what could wait until the summer, but needs to be done by the summer or in the summer, and what could wait generally, and what would, in your opinion, be the best course of action from an engineering, architectural, and to some degree, and I would not expect you to opine on this, but from a budget point of view. In other words, is repair the better course or replacement for any particular portion of your report? And again, we know this is a preliminary report and your opinion may change when you get more information.
Sure, Mayor. For me, the structural elements that we talked about should be immediate. Again, the building isn't falling down, but you don't want to wait for it to happen, right? And it should be done immediate, as in, it doesn't have to be tomorrow, but it shouldn't be in 3 months from now. It should happen pretty soon. We should start lining up the people to do the work. The air conditioning, heating system, it's not a life safety issue, it's a convenience issue, but how livable is the space that you're working in when you don't have heat to control? The electrical, because of the heating issue and putting all those electric heaters on, becomes a safety issue, right? The overall work from that 91 edition, from what I saw, from the issues at the police building and the drainage, the structural issues, is a red flag to me. So what is behind the walls that we can't see? So from an electrical perspective, I think it would be good to get an electrician in there concurrent while doing the structural work. If there's going to be a disruption, let's get it over with. And again, you're adding outlets to make it a safer environment by being able to plug in those heaters without worrying about blowing a fuse or worse, creating an overload. The water infiltration issues, as the councilman said, that Jason said he would be taking care of that. I would consider that more immediate, only because it's a low-hanging fruit. It's a labor issue, not really a cost issue there per se. But the water infiltration at the police building, it's not a life safety issue, but it shouldn't be left for 2 years from now because of the potential health issues at the basement if there's a constant high moisture level. And this is the cause of it. It would be good to have that resolved by, say, the summer when the humidity levels really go up. Over the winter right now, it's low humidity. You still might get moisture there, but it isn't going to linger because the air will take it out. So I think that's something that is, within the next few months, that should be addressed.
Okay, and I know the council will want to ask some questions and I don't want to hold it up, but let me summarize. If I understand you correctly, what you're saying is the structural issues should be done between 0 and 2 months. That the electrical should be done between 0 and 2 months. That the mechanical is between 3 and 6 months. That the water could wait 6 months, but it would probably be better and it's not all that expensive if we did it within the next 2 months.
The water at the borough side, that could be done tomorrow. The water at the police side, again, you're dealing with masonry too. You're not going to be doing that outside in the next 3 months anyway. It's probably going to have to wait till spring, but you should investigate it sooner than later.
Okay, so a part of the water issue should be done immediately, 0 to 2 months, and part of the water issue should be considered 3 to 6 months.
That's fair.
All right, Council President Kanigo, question now or later?
Now it's fine. Thanks, Mayor. Sir, are there any concerns with asbestos in the building?
The only potential I saw was above the ceilings or where the structural work requires us to open up walls and ceilings. I don't believe it's in the walls. From the portions we opened, they looked like they were sheetrock clad over the old framing. But when you open the ceiling tiles, there are 2 more layers of ceilings above there. And I don't know. So it would be prudent to take a look at them and perhaps have somebody test it.
Yeah, and if there is asbestos, how does that change the ability for us to keep going with staff in the building?
Well, it's not a problem until you disturb it. And so what would happen is that would be the first portion of the structural work is you'd have a team come in that's licensed to remove asbestos, and they would have to remove asbestos in the work areas so that when the framer would come in, when the carpenter would come in to do the repairs, they're not disturbing any of it. So it just puts an extra step in there, and that might be, the actual removal might be a day, 2 days.
Okay. One more question. While we're waiting to fix these things, would it be possible for us, if to rent like a generator so that we can plug just the heaters, the temporary heaters in for our staff? I'm concerned with the weather getting colder. If we take it off the electrical grid and we have a portable generator for a couple of weeks, a month, while it's getting cold, and this way people can work comfortably. Is that something that could be done?
I don't think that is necessary, Councilman. The load isn't an issue, right? It's just that the few circuits that you have are overloaded. There's more room to add circuits. So I think the solution is get an electrician to come in and add a few outlets where you expect to put these heaters, and that can be done quickly.
Perfect. All right. Thank you. I have no more questions, Mayor. Thanks.
All right, Councilwoman Bastide?
I'm going to pass. Thank you.
All right, Councilwoman Kaufman?
Just wondering if we have any ballpark estimates on the cost.
No, I don't. Not just yet.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Gaudier?
I'll pass right now, Mayor.
Okay, Councilwoman Cohen? Monsanto Cohen?
Nothing at this point. Thank you.
Councilwoman Kinsella?
Nothing at this time.
All right. Could I have Mr. Baglateri and to come, Chris, if you can open up, but we're going to go to our BA, Ms. Apartalo.
One thing I wanted to bring up is that, yes, we took down all the boxes that were in the attic. I don't know why they were even up there to begin with. Luckily, this year we started our records inventory program, and there were about 800 boxes throughout the building. We were able to destroy 300. which leaves us with 500, but now we have all of this year's records to box up. So right now, everything that was in the attic is right now in council chambers, and it's took up like almost all of the public seating area. We don't have any room in the basement. There are boxes outside the clerk's office in the conference room area. I'm waiting to hear back from the state, but we will need to rent document offsite storage because there's just nowhere in the building. And once everything is fixed, doesn't make good sense to put stuff back in the attic. Not just the load, it's the fact how the stairway is. It's there's no no handrail, no nothing. While the guys were working, I was so scared of them getting hurt. So storage is and will be a long-term issue, but right now I'm looking for an immediate fix for the long-term records, because they can't just be left in council chambers or in the courtroom. There are some sensitive documents, long-term permanent documents that need to be put somewhere where it's not just secure, but also climate controlled.
So let me just chime in here for the public's benefit. The reason the boxes were put in the attic is we were having water infiltration in the basement. So Mr. Negrian put all the storage up in the attic. Also, the basement was essentially full. And the paperwork that we did keep in certain parts of the basement, specifically in the public safety building or below the police department, had flooding, and some of those records were destroyed. So, so that the public understands that it was a product of necessity and also of convenience. Mr. Negrian preferred having the documents conveniently located. So that was one of the reasons we did it. Lizette, is there anything else you'd like comment on anything from Anthony's presentation that before I ask Chris to comment on what he thinks where we are, even though we don't know what it might cost, but what emergency funding may or may not be necessary and how it might also factor into the capital budget that we're planning for the following year?
No, you just may see in the operating budget, because storage is an operating expense, it doesn't qualify as capital. So you may see an increase in one of the operating lines in order to pay for the rental of the storage space. And it has to be somewhere that is approved by the state.
Mayor, I have one question.
Sure, go ahead.
Lizette, could these documents be converted to digital files?
They could, but at the same time, you still need to keep the paper copy. The state strongly wants us to keep a paper copy. You could, for redundancy, scan certain documents, but that also is very time consuming, and you need to store the records right now, offsite.
Okay. So even if we did do that, even if we scanned all the documents, we still got to keep the paper anyway.
Yes, especially the permanent long-term documents like your minutes, old ordinances, what is deemed permanent, you still have to have the paper. Until the state changes the law, we have to keep paper.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Chris, whatever 2 cents you can offer for our overall review and thinking would be appreciated.
Sure, thanks, Mayor. If we're just looking from a procedural perspective, we'll modify our capital budget planning to accommodate what needs to be done. From a timing perspective, I'm operating under the assumption here that some of these projects are going to be large enough that require us to go out to bid. So you will have to authorize going out to bid for the projects. Generally, you're going to, between advertising the bid, opening the bid, and then approving the bid, that you're going to have a 60 to 7 day window in there, at which time we will introduce and adopt an ordinance to fund the projects if we don't do it before that, depending on the urgency. So we can move forward with authorizing going out to bid, but we can't move forward with authorizing the award of the contract until we have the funding in place. From a timing perspective, We can't adopt or introduce an ordinance until our annual debt statement is done. So the first meeting after the reorganization meeting, we'll be able to introduce an ordinance if we have to do it that quickly. Otherwise, if we want more time to discuss it, the second meeting or sometime in February, we can do that as well. It really depends on when you're looking to award these contracts.
Okay. So, Anthony, I want to come back to you with your thoughts about what you've heard.
I was going to say that I would consider, and you might want to declare the structural work an emergency. It is also possible, I don't know, the threshold in town, is it 40 before you have to get bids?
44.
Okay, so, in the least here, we could prepare very basic documents to outline what the repair is and solicit quotes. If they're under that threshold, then you don't even have to worry about the emergency. But in my opinion, based on my public work, I would imagine that the structural repair can be considered an emergency.
All right, I'd like to go now to Councilwoman Claudiana Malari. Councilwoman-elect, is there any question or comment you'd like to make at this time, since you will be joining the council in just a few weeks?
Not at this time. Thank you.
All right, very good. I'd like to now, if I could, with the council's consent, without objection, I'd like to just ask Ed Alter a few questions from the employee's point of view. Is there objection? Hearing none. Ed, if you can just give us a general idea what the work conditions are with the mechanical problems that we were having, specifically the heating.
Well, I will tell you that today the temperature in the office was around 66 degrees, between 66 and 67. People were wearing jackets and sweaters. It's getting cold, and we know it's going to get much colder. So it is an issue already, even before the thick of the winter arrives. I do have one or two other questions. If you don't mind, I want to ask the
Actually,
engineer.
no, you may not ask questions. You're not an elected member of council. So we can open to the public and you can ask the questions generally, but interrogation or questioning of a professional is not something that would be permitted at this time.
Okay. Well, I will tell you that I think that the file cabinets are so overloaded that I think they're adding stress to the floors. And if we remove some of those paper files and go digital, but still keep the paper that we legally need to do, maybe off-site, that would help. It would also give you more floor space to put outlets. Right now, the entire walls of my office and all the offices next to me have file cabinets all around the edges. I don't even know where you'd put another outlet right now. So I would hope we'd consider getting rid of some of those file cabinets to make some space and go digital with our files and keep the legally required documents off-site. That's just a suggestion.
All right. Any other suggestion or comment that would help the council consider what it needs to do, or in whatever way?
No, the electric is definitely overcrowded. I probably have about 7 to 10 extension cords and outlet strips going around the floor because there's only several outlets, and I have the computers, the heat, and now the space heaters as well, and other electrical items that need to be plugged in. So that is a big issue.
All right. Thank you, Ed. If you could mute yourself at this time, that would be great.
Okay.
Anthony, any further comments before I run through the council again?
No, sir.
All right, Council President Kaniga.
Sounds like we have our marching orders.
All right. Councilwoman Bastide.
No comments at this time, thanks.
You're welcome. Councilwoman Kaufman.
No comment, thank you.
Sure. Councilman Gaudier.
No comments at this time, Mayor. Thank you.
Councilwoman Montesano Cohen.
Just one question about the documents and the storage. Lisa, what is the retention policy for those documents until we can actually put them online or digital?
Well, we'd have to get special permission from the state. The vendor that we did use for the inventory can get us that records imaging certificate. But we have to apply for it to the state and get approved, and they could do that for us. I already have them on retainer to start with some building department files, and that's part of next year's budget. And then as far as destruction of records, it depends on the type of record. A paper generated today from our offices can be destroyed as soon as 3 years or could be permanent. That's the range, but no sooner than 3 years.
All right, Councilwoman Kinsella.
No question at this time, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, so at this point, if I'm understanding this correctly, and Anthony, Lizette, and Chris, please chime in if I'm wrong, we really are dealing with two immediate issues. One is a structural issue, and we'll need a motion and a second from the council in a few moments to approve you moving ahead with resolving the immediate issues, going out to bid to whatever degree we can. And the second one is a motion and second from the council to deal with the added expense of storage. And the council will consider to approve that or not approve that. I'm not trying to say the council will approve that. I think they will, but that's a council decision. Is it correct that these are the two things that need to be decided tonight?
Well,
or Lizette, go ahead.
Yeah, I would add not just in resolving immediate issues, but authorizing Mr. Iavino. What he did was an overall assessment to advise what needs to be done, but he would need to be authorized to delve in further, like he said, with the columns, look behind more walls. Like this was just a very preliminary assessment. He has to go deeper into the surface, into the structure.
Okay, so then we're really talking about three motions. A motion to approve for additional services with, I guess, we would have to put a cap on that. Normally, motions of this type require us, say, not to exceed 10,000 or whatever it might be. A motion to approve for some sort of structural bid to go out, and a motion to approve for storage. Lizette, would you agree that those are the three things that we need to consider tonight, or not those three things, maybe just one of them or more?
No, I would agree. It is those three things, and then the more in-depth evaluation that can be ratified at the recess meeting via resolution and proper certification of funds.
Okay. Anthony, does that make, oh, hold on, Councilwoman Vestine.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Maybe Anthony was going to answer this, but I thought that Anthony had also recommended during the structural piece that the electrical be looked at. Maybe Tom, you were suggesting that. I just wanted to be clear that we'd be addressing that in this 0 to 2 month time frame. It sounds like we should be.
Yeah, I kind of saw them as the same thing, but you're right. He listed them as two separate issues.
Okay.
And of course, the water, we can just authorize Jason to fix that because that doesn't seem like we need to go out to bid for that. And that is really a manpower issue, if I understood correctly. Anthony, was that correct?
I believe so, yes.
All right. So Anthony, are you in agreement that basically you're looking for approval for these two areas, and Lizette's looking for the storage, which ties into yours?
Yes, yeah, in the least, yes, Mayor. They're the most immediate.
And you say in the least, do you have comment?
Well, I think the heating air conditioning issue, there has to be some direction figured out in terms of the path forward, right? And I think, my engineer just simply needs to go a little bit deeper into the system. And I can't offer what that direction is. I just need to talk to him a little bit more
So
like
you
I
would need
mentioned
for the
earlier.
council to authorize a deeper look by our mechanical engineer. Is that correct?
Yes, that would be helpful, yes.
So,
Mayor, before you proceed, our CFO has a question.
sure. Go ahead, Chris.
To Mr. Ivino's point before, you can bypass the bidding requirements if it's deemed an emergency. So and it doesn't change anything about the procurement, the appropriation side of it, but it will expedite the procurement process. So to the extent that you're giving a verbal approval tonight for him to move forward with either quotes or bidding, we should segregate out the items that we're going to deem an emergency. We should get quotes for them, and then we can talk about whether we have adequate funding in place today to award them very quickly, or if it's something that we want to expedite in early January of next year. But we just want to make sure that we separate out what we're deeming an emergency versus the regular items that have a couple of months of lead time.
Okay. So Anthony, if you could, and Lizette, and no, not Lizette, and if you could jot these down so that when we have the motion, we make sure we do this correctly. Anthony, what would you consider an emergency and therefore a different form of process and funding?
The structural work and the electrical work because of the need for the heaters.
Okay. All right. Well, that seems easy enough. I don't know what we need after that. All right. So the council, what I need from you is some direction. First of all, do you wish for these to be separate motions, seconds, and votes? Or do you want to kind of group it for immediate and non-immediate? Or do you want to separate into all four? Separated four different pieces.
I would suggest doing the emergency and non-emergency and moving forward right away on everything that needs to be done.
Is the rest of the council in concurrence? Nodding would be
Yeah.
good, or a thumbs up.
Yes.
All right. All right. So Lizette, Ann, please watch to make sure I do this correctly. So I need a motion and a second to approve to move forward with for structural and electrical repairs as directed by Mr. Iovino for emergency use, for emergency purposes, and that this would would also authorize the mechanical engineer to move forward with a more in-depth look, and it would also authorize Mr. Iovino to do a more in-depth look in order to develop those bids.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, before we move any further, Lizette and Mr. Iovino, Chris, did I couch that correctly? Did I frame that correctly? To the best of the ability. Okay, good. Lizette, good, good.
Yes.
All right, roll call, please.
Councilwoman,
Wait, could this be a all in favor?
Actually, no, because you're taking official action that will eventually lead to the expenditure of public funds.
That's what I thought.
Sorry,
Oh,
Ann.
all right, go ahead, Ann.
Councilwoman Bastide,
Yes.
Councilman Kanigo,
Yes.
Councilman Gautier,
Yes.
Councilwoman Kaufman,
Yes.
Councilwoman Kinsella,
Yes.
Councilwoman Montesano Cohen.
Yes.
Okay, now we have Anthony. Is there, Lizette, Chris, is there a second outside of the storage issue? Or did we cover everything we needed to cover at this time?
Well, eventually the storage issue would be to move these records off-site, but
Yeah, and we're
A
going to do
few-
that. I'm just
yeah.
wondering if there's anything else with structural, architectural, or mechanical that we didn't approve that we need to consider for long-term, which would be non-emergency?
I think that'll be resolved once Mr. Iovino and his professionals conduct their in-depth evaluation. We'll know better then. So the main thing is to have them start this emergency work, and based on their evaluation, they could give us more details on long-term planning and needs.
Okay. What may I suggest to the council that we keep January 10th open, just in case we need to have a special meeting on the evening of the 10th, depending on what Mr. Iovino and his professionals, and of course, Mr. Bagliataglia, okay, Mr. Bagliataglia, have, hopefully it can wait to the 24th, but just in case there is the need for a special meeting, everyone could try to keep that section of their calendar free. Okay, so now we move to the second question. This is, would this be considered an emergency authorization since this is weight in the building? The storage question. Chris. And if it's not, it's not. I just want to make sure we do it correctly.
I mean, it's a scenario where if you have your structural engineer indicate that this is causing it's jeopardizing the public health, safety, and welfare, then the answer is yes. That's not a call that I can make myself.
No.
And then the governing body would authorize that via resolution, declaring it as such an emergency.
All right. All right. Council President.
Is there any need for the storage to be declared an emergency since?
I don't think so. I'm just trying to get their opinions.
No, I know, but it's under that $44,000 threshold that was talked about before, so we'd be able to go forward with it anyway, I would imagine, right? So.
Well, also I found a vendor approved under state contract, so that makes things a lot easier. I'm just waiting to hear back.
All right, then we can make it simple. Could I have a motion and second to authorize the business administrator to move to find storage for our current files under state contract or under the $44,000 limit?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and second. Before we go forward, Lizette, did I frame that correctly?
Yes.
Roll call.
Councilwoman Bastide,
Yes.
Councilman Canigo,
Yes.
Councilman Gautier,
Yes.
Councilwoman Kaufman,
Yes.
Councilwoman Kinsella,
Yes.
Councilwoman Montesano Cohen.
Yes.
All right, so that's approved. So Anthony, is there anything more that we need to do in this regard with the information you currently have, or have we covered the bases that you needed for us to cover? In other words, have you gotten the direction and authorization that you need to do what you need to do in the immediate future?
I believe so, yes. I think we're good.
Good. And Lizette and Chris, we're okay at this stage? All right.
Yes.
Is there any further business before this body? Are there any comments that any member of council would like to make at this time? Hearing none, could I have a motion to adjourn? Oh, no, I'm sorry. We
No.
have to open to the public. Could I have a motion from any member of council and a second to open to public comments?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed? Any abstentions? All right, so Ed is currently a panelist, but we also have an attendee. So go ahead, Michelle.
If anyone has any questions, just raise your hand, and Ed, you can already speak, but for Rob Thompson, just raise your hand and I'll allow you to speak if you have any questions.
While Rob's considering that, why don't we just recognize Ed? Ed,
Okay.
remember, you're not allowed to speak directly to our professionals, but you can ask a question of the council. If the council is so inclined, it will then ask that question of our professionals.
Understood. My question to the council is, I did not hear anybody ask any questions about elevator safety during or after the construction. And since we're going to play with the actual structure of the building, it might change or affect the safety of the elevator. So that's one thing I would consider. And the other thing that I did not mention, which I should have, is we do have plumbing issues, as minor as it sounds compared to all the other issues, especially on the first floor. So I would hope those would be addressed at some point as well.
And
That
can
was
you
pretty
give us
much
a better idea of what you mean by plumbing issues?
Well, there's already signs in the bathrooms that you have to flush several times because we have plumbing issues. So it's mostly the bathrooms and flushing issues.
All right, well, that would be something that our Department of Public Works Superintendent would take a look at and then make a recommendation. So,
Okay,
but if the council has no objections, I'm going to ask Mr. Iovino about the issue of the elevator. Is there any concern, Mr. Iovino, about the elevator and our overall structural worthiness?
No, there isn't. Any of the work that we're talking about is independent structurally of the elevator. The elevator is a separate tower that was built inside the building. So I'm not concerned about the strength of the shaft of the elevator.
All right.
thank
Mr.
you.
Alt, good. Mr. Thompson, are you going to ask a question or not? You don't have to.
Doesn't look like it. So,
All right, then could I have a motion and a second to close to the public?
so moved.
All right, I'll
Second.
consider the motion second. That's good. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? All right, then. Lizette, are we good to go?
Yes.
Could I have a motion and a second to adjourn? Oh, before we go.
No, we have to go into all closed session.
Oh, that's right. Mr. Iovino and Mr. Battaglia, thank you so very much for being here.
You're welcome, and happy
Pleasure.
holidays to everybody.
Yep.
Happy holidays. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Happy holidays.
I thought we had a separate link for closed session, Lizette.
Yes, we do, and took care of that.
All right, so could I have a motion and second to go into closed session after we adjourn?
So moved.
So moved.
I'll second. And can we have 2 minutes though? before we
Absolutely.
leave?
All right, but we have to do two motions now. All in favor into going into closed session after for 2 to 5 minutes. We'll reconvene as soon as we're there. All there, that is. Please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstention? Okay, Claudiana, you got that link, right?
Yes, I did.
All right, excellent. All in favor of adjourning the special meeting and going into closed session? We need an adjournment now. Please, motion a second.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I count down as motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All, any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, see you all in 2 to 5 minutes.